We're discussing the path of devotion. So we started on chapter 7. There are three introductory verses in this chapter, verses 1, 2, and 3. And so we've done 2 of the verses. It's a little bit of information. And this morning we'll look at this other verse, the third verse, briefly, because as you will find out that these 3 verses are really an introduction, are really designed to keep Arjuna interested because of the deep knowledge that follows. And so before we go further, let us examine the verse. This is verse 3, if you have your Bhagavad Gita with you. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Manushyanam sahasreshu kasyatati siddhaye yatatmapi siddhanam kaschin mam veti tattvata kaschin mam veti tattvata. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Now verse 3 of chapter 7 says, Manushyanam sahasreshu, that among thousands of men, kaschid siddhaye yatati, that someone endeavors for perfection. Yatatam api siddhanam, and even amongst the endeavoring and the perfected. Siddhanam here means perfected. Kaschid mam tattvataha veti. That only someone, only a few, know me in truth. And so this verse helps us to understand that there's a decrease in the people, in the devotees who are desirous of knowing the truth, knowing God. And then there's a smaller among the devotees who would actually make the effort. There's a smaller among the devotees who would actually perfect the science of their aspiration. And from that amount of people, even a smaller amount of devotees will actually know the truth. Bhagavan says in the verse that amongst thousands of devotees, of persons, hardly one strives for perfection. This is the literal explanation of the verse. And amongst those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. So this is a decreasing pattern here. This is not only for human beings, this is for the entire creation, because when we look around us in the world, as human beings, we're nowhere close to the population of other beings. 84 lakh yoni, there are 8,400,000 species, but then each species would have millions and millions of lives and bodies. And so when we take that into comparison, that we are not the biggest crowd, so to speak, because we're not even close to the population of other things. You know, there's fish and animals out there, etc. So only a tiny portion of the innumerable souls that are out in the world are fortunate to get the human body. There's one short 8,400,000 species out there, but we're fortunate to get the human body. So that by itself is a very rare phenomenon. And Scripture helps us to understand how difficult this is. This verse helps us. Drulabham trayamevaitat daivanugrahakarakam manushyatvam mumukshutvam mahapurusha sambhava. This is Vivek Churamani. In the third verse in the first chapter of Vivek Churamani, Adi Shankaracharya says the Durlabham Trayame Vaita. There are three things that are extremely difficult. Daivanugrahakarakam, and if we achieve them, that it's a blessing from God, a blessing that we can only get, God's grace, to get these three things. So like we said, amongst the innumerable living beings, what the verse is referring here to is human beings. So Durlabham Trayamevaitat, the first of the three most difficult things to achieve in the soul's existence is the human body. Manushyatvam, Mumukshutvam, Mahapurusha Sambhava. There are two more. They're not relevant to our topic, this minute, so we'll talk about them another time, but just for information's sake, to get the human body, that's one grace, one blessing. Amongst those who have the human body, mumukshutvam, a smaller amount of those people would have a yearning for God. Mumukshutvam, to seek knowledge, to know God. And then from that set of people, Mahapurusha Sambhava, a smaller amount of people who have this yearning would actually be fortunate enough to meet a saint. A real saint, a God-realized soul. So these are the three most difficult things to achieve in life. So we have achieved one of them. We have the human body. So other animals that we talked about are not inclined, nor do they qualify for what we qualify for. Let's take moksha, for example, freedom. Freedom in life and freedom beyond this existence, to exist with God eternally. However, what we can learn from the other classes of animals is that even though they don't qualify for moksha, in this particular material existence, they'll have to, continue to evolve. Evolve meaning from a reincarnation standpoint. They'll have to progress until they reach a time when they get the human body again. However, these animals, they never fail to perform their duties. Like a tiger is so dangerous, we'll get scared if we see a tiger. Because a tiger can attack another animal, it can attack human beings if you're at the wrong place at the wrong time, etc. But you'll never find a tiger eating grass. Why? Because it has a particular dharma, and it sticks to that dharma. When we look at fire, these things don't have intellect. They don't have reasoning power. But a fire never fails to give out heat and light. Water never fails to, the dharma of water is to wet. The dharma of a scorpion is to sting, and we know the story, we've been hearing it growing up. When the sadhu tried to save the drowning scorpion, and it stung him, and stung him again, and stung him again, even though the sadhu was trying to help him. Why is he doing that? Because he cannot think, that's number one. And two, the scorpion is doing its dharma, unfailingly, regardless of the circumstances outside. The dharma of the scorpion is to sting. Our dharma as human beings is to rise towards Bhagavan. So we can learn from these animals and we can fulfill our duties as well. But coming back to the verse, that we decrease progressively when it comes to a higher state of consciousness. Let's take the example of the Olympics. When we do the Olympics, many people go watch the Olympics. Thousands of people train for one particular race. The 100 meter, for example. But then they have to qualify for their country. And a huge amount of the people who've been training get disqualified because they cannot represent their country, they're not fast enough. And then they go to the Olympic trials, and another large amount of those people are disqualified because they don't meet the Olympic standards. And from that, a very small few, 10 people or so, would be chosen for the race. Now, when they run the race, how many people will win? Even though it's a 100 meter, over the past few years, we've seen Usain Bolt in front all the time. And so they run the race and one person wins. So that's a good example as to how we look at this thing when we try to attain the truth, meaning to know God. However, 10 people run the race, one will win. What is it that the others do? Do they say, well, I didn't make the Olympics this time, life is no good, there's no hope, I will hang up my gloves and do nothing? No, that's not what they do. Those people continue training, they go through the system, they look at their whatever approach they have, they tweak their approach a little bit and they go again. They're not giving up because they have a blessing. They have speed, they have ability, and they want to harness it. And failure doesn't mean giving up. Failure means that you come closer and closer to success every time you fail. So only a few people would reach and one person will win the final. One person gets first place. But this is because of the limitation of others. Nobody's as fast as Usain Bolt, so they all got second and third and 10. However, when we fail to know the truth, to know God, to rise and augment our devotion, it's not because of our limitations. It's because of a lack of continuously trying and trying harder. Why? Because we have it within us. By merely having this human body, we qualified to get first in the Olympics, meaning we qualified to know God. There's so many examples that we can use. There's a good job opening. Everybody wants a job. There are thousands and thousands of applications. Everyone's sending in their resume because it's such a good paid job, and all the things about this job is good, and all the resume will go in there. And what happens? They narrow it down to the first 100, and then to the last 100, and then to the last 10. And then what? One person gets the job. Everybody cannot get the same job. The person who best fits the requirements, he gets the job, or she gets the job. And the New Testament also tells us this. Jesus says that many are called, but a few are chosen. It's like running a marathon, right? We've all looked at a marathon before. When they're at the starting line, you cannot even recognize anybody. There's so many people. But when the marathon is finished, then only one person wins. Why? Because they don't have the speed of the other person or the stamina. Again, it's a limitation of the body. And again, the contrast is we don't have that limitation. It's just an approach. We're not having the right approach. We're not fine-tuning our approach. So like we were saying about the animals before, when we as human beings fail to live our dharma, unlike the people who lost the race, it's a voluntary decision on our part. Because everyone should attain this goal. Why? Because this goal of attaining God, of improving our spiritual status, is natural within us. It is why we were given this body to begin with. It is our true nature. See, if we take the example of if we hold some dirt in our hands and we let loose of it, we release it, where does it go? It falls to the ground. Why does it fall to the ground? Because the earth is the source of the dirt. And some of you might say, no, it's gravity. I understand that. Of course it's gravity. So the dirt falls to the ground because the earth is its source. But if you light a diya or a matchstick, and if you observe, where does the light go? In spite of gravity, the light goes towards the sun. Why? Because the sun is the source of this light. It's just a minuscule part of the sun. It does the same thing. It gives heat and light. So while the dirt falls to the ground because the ground is its source, the light rises to the sun because the sun is its source. For us, as human beings, God, Bhagavan, is our source. What our duty is to rise, to keep growing every day, as we're fortunate to live, to propel the soul to greater heights. Everything else does their duty, but not every time all of us as human beings do. We cannot focus on limitations. Let's take a small story to understand this point. You know, the height of an oak tree, an oak tree is generally higher than the regular trees, right? Like a fruit tree or so. But oak trees in an exhibition a long, long time ago in Japan were not higher than 1.5 feet. Even though these oak trees were 200 years old on average. As a matter of fact, these trees, the oak trees, they grow as high as the depth of the root, right? So the oak trees go as high as their roots go deep into the earth. So taking advantage of this principle, the growers at that time, they cut away the roots of these oak trees. As the roots penetrate deeper and deeper into the earth below, they cut them, resulting in the height of the tree being automatically stunted. The growers continue this process of cutting away the roots as they go deeper, like I said, and the result was they prevented these trees from growing tall. So if the root of the tree was 1 foot or 1.5 feet or 2 feet, that would have been the height of the oak tree. This was some business strategy, for whatever reason I don't know. But the natural height of the tree would be the depth of the root. So in our case, if, for example, we do not allow the roots of our creation, if we do not allow God, which is the root of our creation, to penetrate deep into our hearts, deep into our mind, deep into our everyday existence, then we will not be able to attain the natural height of spiritual evolution. Natural heights of spiritual evolution means that the destination, that in our journey, trying to grow spiritually, that there's no particular destination that is that is sought, but our journey should be our destination, because every day will uncover something that is more blissful because of our spirituality. So like the tree, our progress can be retarded as well, like the tree. And what would happen is that we'll remain spiritually stunted if we do not forcefully try to raise the level of our spiritual consciousness every day. What we have to do is drink deep into the spirituality, into the scripture, into the godliness that is available to each one of us, so that it may penetrate every fiber of our bodies, of our mind and heart. And we too may be able to free ourselves and grow higher and higher in the realm of realization, of spirituality. See, thousands and thousands of people, Sahasreshu, the verse says, would adhere to the injunctions, to the prescriptions in Bhagavad Gita or scriptures, but not everyone adheres and perseveres until the goal of perfection is reached. Some of us would adhere, would agree, but we do not persevere. We do not continue the march towards God realization. We put a stop somewhere. We employ a limit to where we want to go, and we say that is enough for us. And the argument is that, look, as human beings, we're created to act within our boundaries. But our boundaries are those of the Vedic scriptures. Those are our boundaries. Many people say, in life, the four aims of life is dharma, artha, kama, moksha. It's called purushartha. Dharma means religious merits, artha means artha and kama. Dharma is religious merits. Our art is our material accumulation, our riches. Kama is the ability to enjoy the senses, and moksha is liberation. But when we say that, mostly we focus on just two. We don't focus on the first one, which is dharma, which is whatever our dharma is, that is what we should live on a daily basis. And if we do that, we'll be able to enjoy freedom in this life. We forget about those two, and we get caught up with artha and kama, to what the senses can enjoy and how much we can accumulate. So just one or two of these aims we get caught up in. But we have to become dharmic. We have to focus on the first one as well, because this will put everyone else into perspective. It will show us how to live artha and kama, and we will attain moksha, liberation. So to become dharmic is rare among these four purushartha, because only a few people will develop the desire to go to that height of reaching God. But Bhagavan says that, I sent you to accomplish a certain project. That's why I gave you this human body. Bhagavan gave us a fully loaded equipment. And with that equipment, we can gather all necessities. But all we do, we gather the necessities, and we only use certain aspects of the equipment given to us to pursue God realization. We use them for every other project that comes up in life. We should, because we have to live and we need material things to live, but there has to be a balance. Artha and kama are not the only things we should be doing. If we do, we're failing in life. We have to pursue dharma as diligently or even more than the other things. Because if we pursue artha and kama, we'll get those, but we may not know how to handle them properly, because we're not equally involved in dharma. And so they can potentially be of harm to us, because there's no spirituality that is injected into the system of using these things that are available to us. And not everything that is available to us should be used. I'll tell you a little story of West Indian gentleman in New York who had a business. He had about 5 or 6 employees, and he, of course, put one of these guys as the person in charge of the operation. This was a repair business, a workshop as we call it. And so the person in charge, the way a workshop runs, I don't know, but now this is many years ago, that person who runs the business, he calls the supplier, he orders the parts for the car, whatever they need, he makes the bill, he receives the parts, he installs it on the car, he gives the customer a bill, he collects the money, and then he gives it to the owner. So this gentleman that was in charge of the business saw an opportunity because he was in charge. He had freedom to order whatever he wanted and put it in whatever car he wanted. He was expected to do the right thing. But he started taking the business from the business owner, unbeknownst to the business owner, telling the people to take their car by his house. This is a real story. And on top of that, he ordered parts in thousands and thousands of dollars from the store, the wholesale store, received it at another location, took the parts to his house, fixed the cars, charged the customer, but never gave the money to the business owner. So what did he do? This equipment, this system was available to him. He used it for his own benefit. He committed a crime. He was caught because he was using the owner's money to buy the parts and fixing the cars and taking the money. The company wanted to take him to court and imprison him and things like that because he was caught, as we say in Guyana, red-handed. And the owner asked the company to just let him go, hopefully that he would have learned his lesson. So the thing is, whenever we see something, whenever we have access to something, that doesn't necessarily mean we have to be involved in that. If we see somebody doing a particular dance or behaving a certain way or going to a certain place or eating certain food, we don't necessarily have to do that. We have to focus on what our core values are. If those things are beneficial, then of course. Don't be enticed by that which is harmful. We do that sometimes as human beings, and we say that, we're climbing the ladder of success. It's fine to climb the ladder of success, but we have to be careful which ladder we're climbing. Because we can not focus on which ladder we're climbing, and we're busy climbing the ladder only to find out when we get to the top that the ladder we have climbed was leaning against the wrong wall. What happens there? You cannot come down and there's no second chance. You cannot restart. You've already lived your whole life. You reached to the tip of your life and you've been climbing on the wrong ladder. So let's don't get ourselves into that position. Let's don't be who Sri Krishna says the masses are, the people who fall out of the bandwagon of spirituality. Because if we do, it will never be the body's fault. It will never be the intellect's fault. See, because in the same way that a book never changes anybody's life, people who read books, it doesn't change your life like the scriptures. You know how many people claim that they know Bhagavad Gita, they know this scripture, that scripture? They're not God-realized soul because they never put the teachings into practice. So if you don't, a book will never change your life, just like a hammer never builds a house. If you put a hammer there to go build a house, it wouldn't. It's a good tool, but it's the energy that is used. It is the energy that powers those tools. It is the optimism and the willingness to assimilate, to put the teachings of the scriptures in our daily lives. That's when we will benefit. If we use the hammer, we can use it to destroy something, or we can use it to build something. It is our choice. It's a process. It's the energy behind the hammer. It's the decision amongst the 60,000 to 200,000 thoughts that we have passing through us every day. It is necessary. It is recommended by the scriptures that the human body, we should use it to attain God. Here's an example from Shiv Puran. Shambho Shankar Deva Bole Baba Mahadeva Bole Baba Mahadeva Shambho Shankar Deva Yadi nasti samudramah dulabham prapya manusham vritat janma kirtanam shambho shankar deva bole baba mahadeva bole baba mahadeva bole Mahadevai, Bole Baba Mahadevai. Shiv Puran Uma Samhita, 20th chapter, 32nd verse of Shiv Puran says, Swarga Apavarga Labhaya, that attaining this most difficult human body, difficult to attain human body, if proper effort, Durlabham Prapya, most difficult to attain this body, Swarga Apavarga, to not work towards attaining God's abode, or to be freedom, or to enjoy freedom, if we don't do that, Manusham Vrittata Janma Kirtitam, doing kirtan, meaning focusing the mind on God, if we don't do that, Vritta, Shiv Puran is saying that if we fail to make those efforts consistently, this human body is useless. The word useless is used, tajjanma. Now, clearly this does not fit with, people who see the world as a representation of God and nothing else matters. But this is what Shiv Puran is saying. We don't want our existence to be useless, so let's ensure that we follow what Bhagavan is saying. So in the verse, Bhagavan has used the word siddhi. The first verse, chapter 7, verse 3, because there are many explanations for the word siddhi, but siddhi here is used for perfection. Perfection meaning perfection in the spiritual path. So siddhas are people who have become successful. And we have to always remind ourselves that success comes from a calm mind in which the intellect is focused, in which you're very clear, the intellect is focused and it's clear and it's sharp. When we're in such a position, those are the things that lead to perfect action. Siddhi, perfection in our spiritual path or in anything in our daily lives, comes from setting a manageable goal. We have to ensure that the goals we set in life are goals that are activity-based and not necessarily or only result-based. Because in the spiritual path we said that the journey is the destination, not necessarily a particular destination, because every day we'll encounter, we will see and experience a greater level of happiness. Every day it's a new destination. So if we make our goals activity-based, what does that do for us? Because there will be no goal if you cannot, activity-based means if you cannot put the work in action. If we cannot put in the work, then goal setting is a waste of time. We cannot achieve anything in the spiritual world or the material world. So let's don't set a goal, firstly, if we don't believe in it. If we don't believe in it, we wouldn't succeed. We cannot set irrational goals. One thing we'll be doing there is lying to ourselves because we're not going to pursue it. More important than the goal, we have to have a system in place. And we have to work the system as though our life depends on it. So we don't just set a goal, because goals are about the result you want to achieve, right? The result that you achieve, that's a goal. That's what you set. But systems, on the other hand, are about the process that leads to that result, to that goal. The system, it's more important than the goal. For example, if you're a coach and your goal is to win a championship, what does the coach do? His system will be the way to recruit players, the way he manages his assistant coaches, the way he conducts practice sessions, etc. Those systems would lead him to realize the goals. But if you don't have any system in place, you would get to no goal. And many people say, oh, let's don't sweat it. You know, God provides for, we don't have to work towards any of these goals. God provides for everyone. God even provides for the birds. Have we stopped to ask ourselves that it is true that God provides for the birds, but does he actually bring the worm and put it in the bird's beak, or does the bird go out and work for it? We know the answer to that. Because successful people and unsuccessful people in any particular race, in the Olympics, in the marathon, whatever they're involved in, they share the same goal. They want to win. They want to be successful. But like we said, some will lose and some will win. So if some will lose and some will win, but they all had the same goal, now we cannot say that the reason is because of the goal, or that a goal cannot be or what differentiates the winners from the losers. Because they all have the same goal. Some won, some lost. So goal is not what differentiates them. It is the work that you put in will make the differentiation. Because as we know, there's a thing in goal setting, and is that it suffers from a case of survivorship bias. We say in the world that the strong will survive. So goals are good for setting a direction, but systems are best for making progress to achieve your goal. So apply this to anything you do, and you will see how life would be different. You will see how you're making progress on an everyday basis in any way, spiritually or materially, whatever you do. I'm not saying take all this and just only apply it to your material life. Apply it to your spiritual life as well. That is more important. So we should build a system that is designed to continue playing the game. Playing the game through the long term. So we're not falling out like Sri Krishna says, only a few would know the truth. So build a system where we're playing, like we said, we'll enjoy a new destination every day, and we'll play for the long term, which means that we'll really get to our goal. Because it shouldn't be about a single accomplishment. Oh, now I can focus for 5 minutes. Oh, now I've made it time to do my sadhana every morning for 10 minutes and you give up. No, have a system where you continue to improve. Because ultimately it's your commitment to the process that will determine whether you get the desired result or not. Commitment to the process and setting of manageable goals and following the system. Let's take an example before we close. If you're a person who wakes at 6 o'clock in the morning, but you want to start waking up earlier. Now, let's say you've been going to bed at 10 o'clock and you wake at 6, or you go to bed at 12 o'clock and you wake at 6 because your body needs 6 hours of sleep. I'm not saying this, I'm using this as an example. And now you want to start waking up 5. You cannot continue going to bed at 12. You will wake up 5 the first morning, it will never happen again because you don't have a system in place and you're so tired, you're lacking 1 hour of sleep. And Dr. Michael Bruce, who's nicknamed America's Sleep Doctor, says that being deprived of 1 hour of your routine sleep is equal to a person being under the influence of 2 beers. Beer, you know, beer that you drink? It impairs your judgment. So if you want to wake earlier, then it's important that you continue to get the right amount of sleep. But how does it happen? It wouldn't happen from the second day because you have no system in place. We have to first figure out what our chronotype is. Chronotype means we have to figure out how much some people need, 4 sleep cycles. A sleep cycle is 90 minutes, so that's 6 hours. Some people need 5, that's 7.5 hours. We have to figure these things out. You know your body, how much sleep you need. And then if you have to go to bed at 11 because you're waking at 5 to get the same 6 hours of sleep, then what does it mean? We used to be on the computer right before we go to bed. You go at 12, so we put down the computer, our blue lights, we put them down at 11. Now if you want to go to bed at 11, we have to change the whole system. We have to put away our blue light emitting, the gadgets, an hour before. Because blue light shuts down your melatonin production. Melatonin is a sleep-producing hormone. So if we need 1 hour to sleep before, then we have to put away those things 1 hour before. And then we have to go to bed an hour before. So we have a system in place. You probably, put a lavender scented diffuser or something in the room. You create a system whereby it becomes conducive for you to fall into a routine. And so in the same way, spirituality is common to all of us. But our willingness, our eagerness to manifest and to harvest, to express our spirituality is not common in everybody. It differs. This is what the verse is saying. It differs because we make a conscious decision. We follow the mind. This differs from person to person. The more learned you are, based on scriptural knowledge, the more resolute you'll be, the more serious you'll be, the greater progress you'll make. And if you haven't read the scriptures, just listen to those who have read the scriptures and understand it. So spiritual seekers who engage themselves in the pursuit of knowledge, more times than not every time, but it results in what Bhagavan is calling the siddhas. It results in those who are able to be successful. He says that amongst those who do, only a minuscule strive for spiritual perfection. And among those perfected souls, only those who are aware of my divine glories, only a smaller few are aware of his divine glories. They're very, very rare, very few. Why is this so? Why only a few succeed? Because there's something that happens to us when we live. We make a decision in the morning. We're going to do this today, and then life happens. So we get distracted. We seem to disqualify ourselves from what we planned. So how is it according to the verse that how is it that even perfected souls, as Sri Krishna is saying, are not able to know God? This is a different layer. There are many people, and ones who have knowledge, and then there are ones who have perfected his soul, and then there are ones who actually know him. If you've perfected the system, you still haven't attained God, because you have to keep working. Why does it happen? Bhagavad Gita helps us to understand. It says, Purushaha saparam partha bhaktya labhyastananyaya. Chapter 8, verse 22. That although God is all-pervading and all living beings are situated within him, yet he can only be known through what? He can only be known through, remember, bhaktya, he can only be known through devotion. And just like when we go to school, so many people register for school. You go from, K through 12, for example. Thousands and thousands of children register for school. And then a smaller amount of children will actually go to high school. And then from high school, an even smaller amount of children will go to college. And for those who go to college, a much smaller amount of those children who go to college will actually finish college, finish their first degree. And from those who finish their first degrees, a smaller amount from those that actually go to grad school. And from that amount, even a smaller amount from grad school will go on to do their PhDs. Many people will say, that's enough, I've done enough, I've worked hard enough, this will take me through life. Oh, this is what average people do, they have a first degree. That's why they're average. Why do you look forward to being average? Look forward to a PhD, look forward to knowing God. That is your PhD in spirituality. We've seen the presidential election, we've seen how many people in the race in the beginning, now it's one. So you keep losing people through the process, and then there's one, and then in the end there will be two people, and one of those two will become the president. So there's a qualification system, and in spirituality the qualification is bhakti. Because without bhakti, without loving devotion, it is not possible to perceive or to know God. Spiritual aspirants, people who perform jnana and karma, those things, the path of actions and the path of knowledge, they have to be coupled with bhakti. If they do not include bhakti, then it will not take you to the highest level. Because in Kali Yuga, Kevala Hari Gunagana, in Kali Yuga, that is what is necessary and that is what works. In the season of, Shravan Maas, Shiv Puran says that very, very explicitly as well. So Sri Krishna has stated this fact several times in Bhagavad Gita, too many times. We can't go through all of them, but we'll close here just with a few examples. And the examples, chapter 18, verse 55. Bhaktya mamami janati yavatya chasmi tattvata tato mam tattvato gyatva vishate tadanantaram. 1855, Bhagavan Sri Krishna declares, only through devotion does one get to know me in truth, that one establishes a communion with me. So all the scriptures actually say this. This is time when we read Shiv Puran, you can check in Shiv Puran, it says Devi Bhagavad Puran. All the scriptures unanimously say the same thing. That the only way to attain God's grace is through devotion. Devotion meaning loving remembrance of God while doing your actions. Bhaktya tananyaya shakya ahamevam vidorjuna jnatum drashtum cha tattvena praveshtum cha parantapa. Chapter 11, verse 54. Bhagavan again is saying here, Bhaktya tvananyaya shakya, tu ananya means exclusive. bhakti, exclusive bhakti to me, or you cannot know me in truth. That I can be seen, jatum drashtum chatattvena, I can be seen as I am standing before you, etc., etc. But if you have bhakti, this is how Arjun was able to see Bhagavan. He saw Virat Swarup because Arjun learned. He gave the mind to Bhagavan. He consumed all the knowledge. And so now, he got to that level when he can understand Bhagavan and he can see Bhagavan. Because he has risen to the right level. And he can enter into the mysteries of understanding God. Even different from the human form that he's seeing in front of him. So spiritual aspirants are performers of religious actions who do not include devotion in their worship. What happens? Everyone gets a benefit, some kind of reaction to the actions they perform. So if you perform an action without bhakti in your heart, there will be benefit, but it will be material, it will be temporary, it will be fleeting, it wouldn't be divine, it wouldn't be eternal. Eternal meaning in God's abode. When we perform an action, there's an equivalent or an opposite reaction. So don't worry about that. That gives us benefits as well, but it's not enough. We don't get to know God with that. So like we said, when you perform these actions, if you do not include devotion in your worship, then those people, they may attain knowledge, theoretical knowledge or gyan. They may go to Swarg, they may get some rewards for their actions. But they'll be devoid of Vigyan. Remember we talked about Gyan and Vigyan last week? Experiential realization. They'll be devoid of that. And if you're devoid of Vigyan, of insight, of intuition, of experiential realization of God, then you cannot know Him in truth. So you wouldn't be able to know God or the absolute truth. You will go to a level, but it will be kept there. So as we know, many people are religious and not the same amount are spiritual. And like we learned that religious acts, the aim of those acts mean ACTS, the aim of those actions is heaven or Swarga. And people of a spiritual mindset, they go to God's abode. So let's strive for God's abode, because most people don't realize what a long journey it has been. And very often it's been a challenging journey with Chaurasi Lakh Yoni that our souls have had to go through to get where we are currently, to get the human body. So let's be a little bit more compassionate to our own selves. That's the only way we'll be compassionate to others also. Let's be compassionate to our souls. Its source is God. Just like the mud's source is the earth, and the matchstick, the fire source is the sun, let us also live and pursue our soul consistently, diligently, every day. So here we have learned that the first 3 verses are meant to create interest in Arjun's mind, because there's much, much greater knowledge that is to come. We'll start discussing those from verse 4 of the same chapter. Bhagavan he told Arjuna all these things, give the mind to me, and there's Gyan, there's Vigyan, and out of so many people, only a few understand me. He told Arjuna all those things so Arjuna can listen and really focus. Why? Because the knowledge that is coming up is extremely important. Because Bhagavan is going to unfold something that can be life-changing, not only to Arjuna, to all of us, if we put them into practice. So the verses were given here to draw Arjuna's attention, to ensure that he's not discouraged, but to help him to focus fully. And if he does like he did, then he was able to see Virat Swarup. He was able to see Bhagavan in all his glory. This was given to him to get him excited, these 3 verses, to listen. So we can use a verse to, just a little quote if we were to remember that if we fix the inputs, meaning our thoughts, what we put in, what we read, how our thoughts and our knowledge will help us to behave in life. Fix the inputs, and the output will fix themselves. So I hope that these few minutes of discussing verse 3 of chapter 7 of Bhagavad Gita has brought a little bit more insight. And from next week, we'll bring the greater knowledge that Bhagavan has given to Arjuna. I want to thank everyone who has been listening. Usually we close our pravachan with a little bhajan. So it's a popular bhajan that explains our topic a little bit. It says, Janam tera bato hi beet gayo, re tune kabahu na Krishna gayo. That we spent our life, bato hi beet. We spent our entire life talking. We didn't really do anything. Do anything meaning anything spiritual. We talked about everything, kabahu na Krishna gayo, except talking about Bhagavan. Pach barasaka bola bala. Pach means 5. Ab to 20 bayo. That from 5 years to 20 years old, we claim that, oh, we're still young, and we're very innocent, and we don't have to start doing anything spiritual now. Magar pachisi maya karan, desha videsh gayo. And then, magar pachisi, you've gone past 20, desha videsh gayo. But now, it's more important for us to travel and to see the world and to go to different places and have friends and associates. All of that is good. Nothing is wrong with it. But we have to also start making spiritual progress. Don't do one and forsake the other. We can do both. 30 बरस की अब मति उपजी लोभ बड़े नितनयो. 30 baras. So we got to 30 years and we're still excited about all the things external. Maya jori tuni lak karori ajahuna tripta bhayo. The time has never arrived for us to do our duties. We keep putting it off. This is why Sri Krishna says in this that so many people understand, so many people pursue, they fall out halfway, and those who continue, they gain perfection. Perfection meaning as to an understanding as to who they are, but then they don't harness that position to actually know me. We keep putting it off. Janam tera, janam tera, janam tera, janam tera, bato hi beet gayo. जन्म तेरा बातों ही बीत गयो रे तूने कबहू न कृष्ण गयो रे तूने कबहू न कृष्ण गयो जन्म तेरा बातों ही बीत गयो. बरस का 5 बरस का भोला भाला, 5 बरस का भोला भाला, अब 24 भयो, अब 24 भयो, मगर 25 माया कारण, मगर 25 माया कारण, देश विदेश गयो रे तूने, कबहू न कृष्ण गयो, जन्म तेरा बातों है बीत गयो रे तूने, कब